Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We've got Mike DeFabo on from The Athletic. I want to talk to him about what DK Metcalf said about working with Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith. Also, Darnell Washington and how the tight ends can be used more. And the Steelers wide receiver coach Zach Azzanni on Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin's progress. All here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. More on them later. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Mike DeFabo. He's back from The Athletic. Mike, it is getting hotter out there. We're sweating it out at minicamp, but I feel like it's a good warm-up for Latrobe, where you're from.
That's right. I am from Latrobe. And today, Beanie Bishop was educating DK Metcalf on the excellent chicken wing scene in Latrobe. And being from Latrobe, chicken wings are not only my favorite food, but one of my favorite things about being alive. And so I love that they were getting into it, chopping it up, talking about how great the wings are, because honestly, shout out to Dino's and Sharky's. They both do a fabulous job with their chicken wings.
It's making me hungry sitting here right now thinking about those wings. I can't wait to enjoy those with you in Latrobe. But let's get into the story of the day, and that's DK Metcalf. He spoke for the first time since being at minicamp. Of course, minicamp began Tuesday. We got to talk to Aaron Rodgers. Wednesday was his day. And I thought there were a few interesting things that he brought up. But, also, you read about this for The Athletic, Arthur Smith kind of opened up a little bit about the Steelers offense, saying like, look, I'm not going to run the wishbone with Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf added into it. What's your sense of how different this offense can actually look this year just with the addition of those two guys?
Yeah, I asked him the question about that because I said, look, you guys ran the ball fourth most last year. Aaron Rodgers attempted the second most passes in the NFL. So how do you marry together really a run-heavy offensive coordinator with a pass-happy quarterback? And, he kind of gave – I think he loves to give us these little one-liners. He is pretty funny. And so he's trying to make a point by saying, I'm not going to run the wishbone. But I think really what you're going to see is an offense that builds off of the running game. And I think the running game is definitely going to still be a big part of what the Steelers do, but then integrating that play pass and opening up opportunities to throw based on running the football. So if I were to guess like a percentage, I think this might end up being a pretty balanced offense. And it could change week to week, but I think the balance is really what they're striving for.
I want to give people a chance to hear from DK Metcalf talking about his growing relationship with Aaron Rodgers, talking about how they met up during back in March before Aaron Rodgers even officially signed with the Steelers, and shortly after DK Metcalf had been traded there. So you hear from him on that and how he sees his role growing in the offense. Here is DK Metcalf Wednesday at Steelers minicamp.
DK, now that Aaron's here, how excited are you? You worked out with him before you guys both arrived here, and now it's actually here. You guys can practice together.
Yes, sir. Just a step closer to football, step closer to solidifying the team and the product that we're gonna put out there on the field this season. Just excited to get to work. I know it's the first look here in a team setting with Aaron, so just to see what type of teammate he is, just excited with everything that he brings to the table.
What did you learn about him in that workout that you guys had in the offseason?
Just how cerebral he is and how he views the game. I like the way he views the game, from a receiver standpoint, but also from a quarterback standpoint. I think I can gain a lot of knowledge just from being around him because he's seen a lot of football. So just trying to soak up as much information and ball as I can.
Did you have a pretty good idea at that time that this would happen?
No, sir, because I never asked him directly like if he was coming. Just trying to give him the space to make his own decision, not trying to sway him one way or another. But just trying to get to know him as a person first, and then teammate second.
How did that come together? Did he reach out to you? You reach out to him?
I reached out to him just to see if he was in the area, wanted to throw, and he was, and we got together.
DK, you gotta do some more.
I'm sorry, what's up?
think it's the same question. Do you plan on doing some more with him in the offseason?
Yes, sir. We're both based out of California, so planning on getting together with him for another throwing session and just watching film or just talking about.
DK, were you and Aaron Rodgers, just what part of the games do you feel like are complementary? Certain concepts or routes or things you think are going to be good for the two of you guys together?
I mean, how quickly he released the ball and me getting off the line of scrimmage fast, I think is one thing that stands out first. But also his playmaking ability after a play breaks down or him to contort his arm a different way just to get the ball out. I think he's unique, and I think it's going to help not only me but a lot of receivers and tight ends in the offense.
As always, Mike DeFabo with a great question at the end there. I think that's the whole thing here, right? Is that Aaron Rodgers has found a way to work with several different types of receivers. He's, before Devontae Adams, he had Jordy Nelson lighting it up with him, Randall Cobb. He's worked with short, fast guys, tall, fast guys, tall, big guys. He talked about Mercedes Lewis compared to Darnell Washington. We'll get to that later. But he's worked with pretty much every style of wide receiver in the NFL. And DK Metcalf is a guy who runs a 4.3 at 6'4" and can bully people off the line. So yeah, they're going to find a way to mesh, and there's plenty of ways that their styles can match up even as Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old.
Yeah, before we got on air here, Chris, I was looking up some percentages of what has DK Metcalf run, where has he been successful. And by far the thing he does most often is run the go ball. And so go route, throw the go ball. So it's interesting you talked about when the play breaks down, because earlier in his career, Aaron Rodgers was great at extending plays and finding ways to create outside of structure when plays broke down. So if he's still able to do that, that definitely would fit that aspect of DK Metcalf's game. But what I think is maybe now that Aaron Rodgers is a little bit older, maybe less mobile, maybe they're trying to protect him a bit, get the football out of his hands more. That's where the first part of his answer, when he talked about that quick release, because the other thing DK does a good job of is running slants and hitches. I think it was about in his career, he's run about 11% of his routes have been slants, about 15% have been hitches. And so that all would seem to fit with the current version of Aaron Rodgers. So we'll have to see how this continues to evolve. But the bottom line is, when you have a receiver like DK Metcalf and you have a quarterback as experienced as Aaron Rodgers, I think they're going to find ways to make this work.
I think that's the thing is, it's going to be about finding ways, and it's going to be about Arthur Smith finding ways. But it sounds like what Arthur Smith is saying, he's open to finding that, and that's something I think that one of your colleagues, Diana Rossini, recently said on one of her podcasts, was saying he's going to be happy to adapt his offense to their skill set.
Yeah, and I think you and I both saw that happen last year. I can't think of two more different quarterbacks than Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. Justin Fields is a fantastic runner, one of the best athletes with his feet in the entire NFL. But obviously we know reading defenses, throwing with anticipation, those were not his strong suits. Then you look at Russell Wilson, he was the complete opposite, where his mobility had significantly declined, but he was still a great deep ball thrower. And even Russell Wilson was allergic to the middle of the field. I think he had a hard time seeing over the lineman because of his size.
Right.
So Arthur Smith loves to throw the ball over the middle of the field. He didn't do it very much because it didn't fit his quarterback. And so, I think that is true what Diana's saying about this, that Arthur has already shown Steelers fans, you had Justin Fields that was available for a 6th-round pick. He was available for nothing, and they turned him into a quarterback that showed enough that they were basically outbid for his services. Russell Wilson, the Denver Broncos essentially paid him to go away. And yet at some point in the season, Steelers fans were thinking, hey, this is the best offense we've seen since Ben Roethlisberger was here. So, I do have faith in Arthur Smith that he's going to be able to figure something out here. And I'm really interested to see how it comes together over the course of the season.
Same here. And I want to talk about how it can also impact other players, because DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers are two big names, but they're just two players in what's going to be a bigger machine of this offense. Darnell Washington also talked about how things might be growing for him. We'll get into that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Mike DeFabo. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, we'll remind you this show is also brought to you by the Skylight Calendar. Say goodbye to the sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, whether they're Google, Apple, Outlook, and so many more, making it simple to track your appointments, practices, dinners, reminders, all in one easy-to-see place. How often do plans get missed because they're buried in a digital calendar or not written down at all? Would seeing your whole week clearly on a 15-inch HD screen help you stay focused and less overwhelmed? Well, right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's skylighthtcal.com/NFL. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter with Mike DeFabo. Mike, I'm gonna lead into this a little bit, with multiple notes here because we're about to hear from Darnell Washington in the locker room. But Darnell Washington had a bit of a highlight towards the end of practice. But the person he received he worked with at this highlight play is going to make a lot of people start jumping up out their seats. And I'm going to say the Steelers were running their 2-minute drill, and at the end of practice, it was none other than Will Howard who threw a strike of a pass, high-pointed it right to Darnell Washington, who snagged it, ran right into the end zone. The whole offense was celebrating, was jumping up with Will Howard over the throw, and everyone was pumped up. And then Darnell Washington, shared with us about that moment later. Before we get to him, I did think that was a cool moment, but I just I'm reluctant to share that on this channel because I know how our Will Howard fans are going to be reacting on right now.
That's right. The hype train is rolling right now. I think I've said it on your show. I call it backup quarterback syndrome. The less that someone has played, the less that you've seen him, the better you think that they are. And I'm not trying to, disrespect Will Howard. I actually think he's a really cool guy. I think that for a 6th-round pick, great potential, great value at that point. But I don't think he's going to be the Steelers starter at any point this season. One quick note on Will Howard and Aaron Rodgers, though. Aaron Rodgers is taking a legitimate mentorship role with Will Howard. Sometimes I think this whole mentor narrative gets blown out of proportion, and sometimes people just write stories about this guy's a mentor to this guy because they play the same position. This feels legitimate and real. I've been watching practice very closely, and you could see Aaron Rodgers saying hey, when you take your drops, do this, or hey, when you're doing this, do this. He said his seat is right next to Will Howard in the meeting room. So I think that Will Howard is can only benefit. He has to be one of the happiest people that the Steelers signed Aaron Rodgers because he's definitely reaping some of the benefits.
I definitely see that. Will Howard, I thought had a good practice for the parts that we could see and are allowed to report because that's also a thing. But let's get to Darnell Washington because one, he'll talk about how his role in the offense is expanding with Aaron Rodgers being there. And then he'll also share about what happened in that moment between him and Will Howard. But here was Darnell Washington Wednesday after practice.
How much different is this offense than
I feel like it changed a lot. Even formation. Yesterday they had me outside running the slant route. Just formation. They got me single receiver, 3-by, 2-by-2, and just different route concepts, things like that.
Is that refreshing as a tight end, who hasn't gotten a ton of targets early in your career?
You say, is that refreshing?
Yeah, to see that you're getting moved around in these different ways that maybe is new.
Yeah, I say so. It's just showing trust. You give your OC a trust that, hey, I had to run this route, I had to be at this spot where the quarterback want to be at, throw it at. So I feel like you give them trust, keep calling it, or even just add more things in similar to that, or things like that.
Darnell, walk us through how things go and you guys get to 2-minute with Will Howard.
Oh, you talking about okay. Defense gave us too high. I had the scene read. Something we was talking about yesterday. I also had it yesterday, but I didn't do a good enough job as I did today. Just saw it too high. Get the outside backer a little move. Split the middle of them, and Will did the rest.
So right there, Will Howard, reading that as well, just being in sync with your tight end. That's a good sign early on. But Mike, I think it's interesting hearing Darnell Washington. And there were other parts of that conversation where he did talk about, like, I can run more routes, I can see more things. I'm also thinking faster because I'm more in shape and I feel better right now in my body. I think that's another element to this offense when we're talking about DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers and how things can fit. And you talked about the middle of the field. The tight ends are the group that normally lives in the middle part of the field. If you're moving them around and make it harder to see where they're coming from, that's another element of this offense that could break things a lot more open.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Darnell Washington, he did the right thing. He gave credit to his quarterback, but that play was made by Darnell Washington. He rose up over the dude and dunked on him, pulled it off of his helmet, back of his helmet, basically. And everybody was going crazy because it was such a ridiculous play. He even added, his celebration was the little layup over the goalpost, which was, had a little swag to it and a little bit of flow. So I like Darnell Washington, and I'm interested to see where his career goes, because when they drafted him, they build him as this unique Swiss Army knife type of weapon. And he's so big that he looks like another offensive lineman and can block guys like TJ Watt 1-on-1. But he also has these great hands and is mobile enough to run some pass patterns. Well, we've only seen the first half, and he's an excellent blocker. And my real question is that all he's going to be? And I think that this year we're going to see an evolution from Darnell Washington. I really do. Based on the quarterback, based on his level, now he's in his third year in the NFL, and also Arthur Smith just gaining trust. So, I'm really interested to see what Darnell can do this year.
Same here. And again, you're not looking for Darnell Washington to be a superstar. You're just looking for him to get an increased role where he's getting more targets, more chances to play. And how many times, Mike, have we been watching the game? We're like, man, if Darnell could get the ball in this situation, he'd probably plow through three dudes. Kind of like the touchdown grab. He when he caught it, he's probably at the 15-yard line or the 10-yard line. And it was just kind of like, oh, there were guys in the way, but you're just not stopping the inertia of this grown man who's going to just naturally fall through you into the end zone with his 6'7" body.
Yeah, right now it's not even like two-hand touch, really. I guess it is. But there have been a couple times where Darnell has caught an out route and turned it upfield, and there's a safety, and you're like, man, that would be a big collision.
Tough.
He runs a slant over the middle, and there's the safety, and you're like, that would be a big collision. And I don't think that the safety is going to win that one necessarily. So I really am interested to see. And what he was talking about when he was saying formationally, there's different things that he can do. That means two things. Number one, it means, can you detach him from the line of the scrimmage? Because he's typically in line next to the tackle. I think we'd like to see him more in more of a Pat Freiermuth type of role at times, just to show some different kinds of things. The other thing that he's talking about is just personnel groupings. And I think that there'll be more instances where he's the lone tight end on the field and you've got three wide receivers, or there's two, DK Metcalf is on the field with Calvin Austin as the wide receivers. Pat and Darnell are the two tight ends. That gives the defense a different look that they have to prepare for. Or you've got two wide receivers to that side and the running back to the side and Darnell. So it essentially creates a 4-by-1. That's another situation where he's challenging the defense in a different kind of way. So I think that as he's talking about, based on schematics and the trust, I think that you're going to see more production out of Darnell in the passing game.
Right. And again, a lot of that also helps when you're able to run more routes. Like you said, you can line them up in different spots. You can put them in these places. It's a lot like how we're talking about with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, right? The more variety you bring to your lineups and how you use guys and where they come from, that's the stuff that can make stuff so harder for defenses to say, oh, they're coming from this way. They're coming from, because when you're doing that, then on film, it becomes harder to pinpoint things because you spend more time watching. Wait a minute, they do that too, and they do that. Oh man, now we got to prepare for this too. That's where I think things can get really interesting if Arthur Smith is able to scheme things up. And if Aaron Rodgers, and that's the other thing with Aaron Rodgers, his cerebral ability to survey the field, process and make decisions with different looks, all of that could create a very interesting chemistry for this offense.
Yeah, and the other thing is, okay, so let's say you send into the huddle
Mm-hmm.
tight ends, Pat and Darnell. You've got DK. You've got Calvin Austin, and then you've got a running back. Let's say Kenneth Gainwell. Well, you think like, okay, there's two tight ends. A run might be coming at us. We'll have to see, and then they could split them out all out wide and have a 5 wide look, something like that. Like that was something we saw a lot in training camp that we didn't actually in the season last year. Was let's say you send 3 tight ends into the game, but they're all split out wide. And so now the defense has their big guys on the field and you just spread them out. Or they do the opposite. The defense has their small guys. Okay, now you can condense the sets and run the football at them. So like having these versatile players is something that Arthur Smith likes. He loves the Cordero Pattersons of the world because of the fact that you can make the defense wrong no matter what personnel grouping they send out there.
Right.
So like Darnell can be another guy very, very much in that mold that based on what the defense gives you, you can then make an alteration at the line of scrimmage that then makes them regret sending that person onto the field to defend him.
I'm right with you there. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this grows. But 2 other guys that need to grow in this offense are receivers, not named DK Metcalf. That's Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson. Zach Azzanni, Steelers wide receiver coach, also spoke yesterday. I want to talk about what he said, what we get from them, and how they can also see expanded roles in the offense. All that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Mike DeFabo, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. The NBA Finals are here, and they are going. The Pacers are taking on the Thunder, and it is just big showdown at the big showdown each night with all big action, and there's big chances for you to win when you play on FanDuel. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live throughout the game. They give you player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, and fans have more ways than ever before to play smart and win big. With SGA, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, the Thunder have dominated all season long, but the Pacers have Tyrese Halliburton, Pascal Siakam, and Benedict Mathurin. They have plenty of stars, both teams star-studded, which gives you plenty of chances to place big bets on big numbers. And if you're new to FanDuel, you can win $200 in bonus bets if you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. It's a great deal to take advantage of during the NBA Finals. Perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com today. Place your first $5 bet, and if you win, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Mike DeFabo. Mike, let's talk about the other Steelers receivers, of course, Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson. Zach Azzanni spoke glowingly of both of them. Granted, he did last year as well, but he did also say last year that he thought Calvin Austin was ready to take a step up, and Calvin Austin did take a step up from where he was the year before. Sure. What's been your impression of those 2 guys so far?
Well, like you mentioned, Calvin Austin did take a step forward last year. And I think that he's taken another one. He's always been a mature young player. And now he's starting to become more of a mature, older player who you see him often being the first person leading these drills. And I think he can fit what the Steelers are looking for here, just because he's so fast, he's so quick, even though he has a height limitation. He can still stretch the defense vertically, and then he's a detailed enough route runner that I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to end up really liking him working underneath. And so I have a lot of faith that Calvin can take what he did last year and build upon it and have an even more successful season. And then with Roman, he is a speed demon. He had track caliber speed. It was at the Nike opening that he really put himself on coaching radars. He was kind of an under-recruited guy until he ran like a 4.3 something 40-yard dash at the Nike opening. So he has that speed. And that was what the difficult part about the ankle injury that he had last year and the hamstring. Like, he's going to have limitations because he's not the biggest, most physical type of receiver, but his whole game is predicated upon creating separation and running good routes and being a quick guy. And so now that he has that back, you're starting to see that burst from him. There was a long play today where he kept running and he was juking guys downfield. And so he still has to continue to develop. And, so this is going to be a pivotal year for him in year 2. But I think he is putting himself in a position to be successful going forward.
Without further ado, let's let their position coach, Zach Azzanni, talk about both of them. Here was him when we were talking to him after the before the Wednesday practice.
With him, what we want to do with him and those things.
Sorry if you got to ask this already, but what's the difference between that you see from Roman and Calvin from last year compared to how they're looking this spring? What you can ask of them?
Yeah, I mean, both of those guys are in different parts of their journey, but night and day. Calvin is, I said this last year after minicamp, if you guys remember that were here, I said I am really excited about his future because he's gotten better and better, and he did it all season. He's a different player than he was a year ago, and that's a testament to him, how he works. He's able to take coaching, he's able to take criticism. Those are good things, and Roman is no different. He's just a little bit farther behind because he's less experienced right now, but same way. He is night and day from he was a year ago. Now, he also spent a lot of time in the offseason really dissecting football, his game. He knows the things he doesn't know and want to get better at them. So again, I just lay out the plan. If they follow it, the sky's the limit. He's been doing that, and I'm pleased with where he's at.
In Gabe last week, obviously you guys are looking at that 2 spot. Where do you view the wide receiver 2 at right now this week?
I mean, it's funny. Everyone, I think, to your point, everyone overlooks number 19. That guy's a legit NFL receiver. I know he's like this big. He just gets separation all over the field. He'll bite your face off in the run game. Nothing affects him. He's a great leader. So, he can do a lot of things that I guess a 2 can do. And then everyone else is battling for a spot, and it's going to be by committee, which I'm okay with because there's a lot of really cool little pieces there that, are sneaky. And so everyone's downplaying, underplaying our group right now. I love it that way. I don't really want anyone looking at us anyway. It'll be good. So I think that 2 spot is all Calvin's right now. And really, him and DK are such different players that, there's going to be plays where he is the one guy because that's his route, and vice versa because they're so different, in stature and everything. So it's a good question.
When we asked DK Metcalf about Calvin Austin, he quote unquote called him a jitterbug with how quick and explosive he is.
Well, I just can't wait, Chris, until we get the picture. DK Metcalf standing next to Calvin Austin when they're split out wide, because that's going viral.
Oh, absolutely. Just one. I mean, he's 6'4", 5'9". Is that half a foot?
Don't make me do math live here on this podcast.
I apologize. I'm asking you to do math live. I think it's half a foot because it's 4 inches plus 3. No, it's more than half a foot. That's crazy. He's more than half a foot tall than Calvin Austin. That is wild to see, like, next to each other. Also, DK Metcalf's locker is next to Beanie Bishop, which is also really funny because he's very short. But back to the point here, Calvin Austin, I did think took several good steps last year. And now he has a chance to take even more good steps. But again, with an experienced quarterback I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers is going to take everything over. He's going to become MVP Aaron Rodgers again. I'm not saying none of that. But Aaron Rodgers, the one thing he will understand is like, hey, there are some basic ways to use a quick speedster and a big bruiser speedster. And we can mix those guys up, get them in different positions. And also with, Pat Fryman, the receiving tight end, Darnell Washington. It's not like this offense is deprived of weapons. I know that there's a want for a proven wide receiver 2 to show up and to be gotten, and maybe they'll go and get one. But I do think Calvin Austin, he may not be a proven wide receiver 2 now. I think he can be a very, very good wide receiver 3 if he's not a wide receiver 2 by the end of the season.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point about this discussion of, like, do they need to go out and get a wide receiver 2? Because you have these guys that you're intrigued by. Like, I'm intrigued to see how much more does Calvin Austin grow? What does Roman Wilson do? How much does Robert Woods have left? Right. Those kind of questions. And if you were to go and get an Allen Lazard, for example, that's going to bump Calvin Austin down the depth chart. And this is already a team that uses a ton of tight ends that because of that means you can't put a wide receiver on the field. So an opportunity for Allen Lazard, who might make Aaron Rodgers comfortable, also takes away an opportunity from these other guys that I mentioned. So, the other part of it is, like, I like that you asked the question, Chris, and we're talking about these guys in tandem because really in a lot of ways, Calvin Austin should provide the blueprint for Roman Wilson because Calvin Austin, just the same, got injured during training camp his rookie season, basically redshirted as a rookie, and then came back with a vengeance his second year and started to show you some flashes of what he could become. And so really, if you're Roman Wilson, you should be picking Calvin Austin's brain and being like, how did you do that? How did you emotionally and mentally work through some of those injury problems? Because if he can follow that same script, then going into next offseason, I think that the wide receiver position is going to feel a lot more shored up than it does right now.
I think that would be very interesting to follow and to see how that's going to progress with what the Steelers want to do. But, I thought it was also interesting, another part of DK Metcalf's conversation, I asked him about mentoring, and because, that's something that, he can do as a veteran wide receiver. But the way he talked about it, he was like, look, he's like, those guys are talented. Like, he's like talking about Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson. He's like, they're also different styles of wide receivers. Like, I'm going to let them do what they do. And if they come to me for advice, I'll give it. And if I feel like I should speak up, I'll speak up. But he's getting to know them. And I think that's a good way to approach it as a potential leader, as DK Metcalf projects to be, saying like, hey, like, I'm still learning things around here. I'm not going to jump out and presume anything. But he is ready to help. But he also recognizes those are different guys with different skill sets. They're smaller, they're faster. They're guys that are going to do that. And I think that how they mesh and how, like, I think you bring up a good point. Like Roman Wilson, maybe he should be talking to Calvin Austin a little bit more because Calvin's doing it. But I think the Steelers do have multiple cracks. And this is also why I think the Steelers haven't jumped at a wide receiver 2 deal just yet. I think they want to see, how does Aaron Rodgers work with these guys a little bit in training camp before they make a definitive move where it's like, okay, they're going to trade away draft capital to get this guy, or spend X amount and then spend X amount of dollars on them. Because like you said, if you go get Allen Lazard and you push Calvin Austin down a peg, and you push Roman Wilson like to your 4th option there, that could push down guys who are ready to be up and comers and be contributors to this offense.
Yeah, the other part of this discussion is last year we saw what happened when George Pickens got hurt. And really that coincided with a tailspin from the offense. And so you don't only have to ask yourself, who's the number 2 wide receiver? You also have to ask, who is capable of stepping up and being wide receiver 1 if DK Metcalf were to get injured at any point this year? And so that's kind of the counter argument to being like, yeah, they're pretty good, let's just wait. Maybe you do want to add another guy in that fold so that then you're like almost as injury insurance so that you feel a little bit better about your depth going forward. But they've got plenty of options. And I really am interested to see, especially the 2 guys that we've highlighted during this discussion, how they do during training camp when they're working with Aaron Rodgers.
Before training camp, they got one more day of mini camp. That's today, Thursday, on June 12th. So with that being said, we're gonna take this show to a close, but we'll be back tomorrow wrapping up the Steelers mini camp. What are our takeaways from there? Check it out here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, or check out Mike DeFabo. He does great work. Mike, let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on social media at Mike DeFabo, and then check out all my work in The Athletic. I actually just wrote a story like a week ago diving into Roman Wilson and his unique background. So very well received from the readers who check that out, The Athletic. If you have a chance, go ahead and give that a read as well.
Absolutely. He's Mike DeFabo. I'm Chris Carter. Thanks so much for tuning into the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find me on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, same handle everywhere. It's at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday through Friday episodes. Back here tomorrow, wrapping up Steelers minicamp here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.